I'm going to send it over to Mike Seidel right now in Miami, Florida, to give us the latest, and he's battling some high winds there. Mike.
Good morning, Dr. Postel. We are getting into the thick of it here in South Florida. We're in downtown Miami in the Brickell section, and these winds are now running 45 to 50 miles an hour, gusting over 60. As you mentioned, Pompano Beach has gusted just over 70 miles an hour recently. The rain right now is not particularly hard, but it is stinging. And if you look at the radar, we've got another heavy band of rain coming in at us. But these winds are going to stay like this all morning into this afternoon. Now, by mid-afternoon, the wind will shift offshore, and that will take care of any surge issues. We're looking for a surge of up to 5 feet, which is better than what we were forecasting a couple of days ago with a more eastern track. The other impact, certainly with these winds, power outages. Just checking Miami-Dade County, Florida Power and Light. They've got 184,000 customers without power, and that is about 15%. Downtown now, we still have power. The power here is buried, but again, with water gets into the underground lines, it can knock it out. We did see a transformer blow a little while ago back towards the Miami River. We're just just west of the Port Miami and inland from Miami Beach. That's a place where you don't want to be this morning, although I suspect that it's not much windier there because there's really nothing blocking the wind between the Atlantic and here except the barrier island in the port. Pretty rough morning out here. Everybody hunkered down. There are people in these condos. Some went to the hotels. They're concerned about flying glass. But many of these hotels have been retrofitted since Hurricane Andrew in condos so that the glass can handle winds like this. Again, these winds sustained 45 miles an hour plus, and we're gusting in the 60s here. When these tropical rain bands come in, it's going to be gusting up to or over hurricane force into this afternoon. Much better day tomorrow as we see the sun come back out. The winds really die down tomorrow as Irma pulls away and weakens rapidly to the north. But today's a day where you need to shelter in place. Paul Goodlow, trust me, you'll be in this sooner rather than later over there on the west coast of Naples.
Yes, in fact, Mike, I was just checking the winds here. Last report, a gust of 44 miles per hour. Visibility has decreased as well. And another concern here is going to be the heavy rain we'll see in the Naples area. Already picked up, closing in on 2 inches of rain throughout the day. And even once the center passes you by, then we see the backside, and then we'll see those relatively frictionless winds coming in on the backside of the hurricane, as well as perhaps another bigger push of the storm surge. So we're pretty fortunate here. Hey, Mike, let's talk about storm surge here. What type of water rise have you witnessed this morning where you are?
Well, I can tell you it's not come up above the dock and the seawall as this water goes in the Miami River, so we're doing okay right now. The water you see here in front of me is mostly rainwater, and they're working on the drainage system here, so that's why we have about 6 or 8 inches of water in front of me here on the street, just off the bay. But so far so good. Looking at the water surrounding Brickell Key and these high rises down here in these condos and hotels, the water has not gotten above the bulkheading. But we've got a long way to go. This tree's going to be my friend right here. Yeah, I'm a tree hugger. Dr. Postel, let me bring you in because we're not that close to the center. If it's 65 miles east-southeast of, or south-southeast of Key West, we're a good, 125 or maybe 150 miles from the center, and this is kind of wind we're getting on these outer bands.
Yeah, Mike, that's a really good point, and I want to make it known to everybody here. The kind of wind that you're experiencing there is actually only a low to maybe medium-end tropical storm force wind. The sustained wind, even at Miami International, is only 36 miles per hour, but they're gusting into the low 60s. But certainly some areas in and around downtown where you are, Mike, have those winds sustained over 40. But that's just a low-end tropical storm force wind, which is really testimony to how powerful the wind is. You you don't need those high numbers to produce that kind of effect with that kind of damage potential. So this is something that I've been stressing my whole career, is that the wind is a really powerful thing, and it is often overestimated by people out in the field. But Mike, you're doing a great job and hanging on in those wind gusts somewhere around 60 miles per hour. And I want to point out that your weather conditions are going to get worse, and your wind gusts there will get worse as well as we move through the morning hours. And you may end up seeing gusts of 70, 80 miles per hour. In fact, we've already seen some of that in nearby areas. And so that certainly is enough to do some damage around your area. Mike.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dr. Postel. You know, I think, with all due respect to humanity, generally people overestimate the wind speed when they're outside. You know, people come up to me on the beach and say, wow, that was, what, a 50-mile-an-hour gust? It's more like 30, 35. But, yeah, this is, as you mentioned, kind of a low-end tropical storm. Sustained winds 45 to 50, gusts 60 plus. And you can see how tough it is to stand up. I weigh about 180 pounds. It gives you an idea, about 6 feet tall. And it's really hard to stand up. Now, what really gets you is not so much the sustained wind, but it's all of a sudden when you get that gust and it jolts you off your footing. So that's why I moved over here, a little bit safer over here with this tree, and I don't want to get blown down the street here, or, you know, get a face plant in the asphalt and concrete. But as you mentioned, it's going to get worse before it gets better here in South Florida. The only thing we can say is that it will not be as bad as it will be over on the West Coast, from Naples and Fort Myers to Tampa. I think Cedar Key, a really nice, quaint fishing village, is really going to be hit hard. That sticks out, Dr. Postel, into the Gulf, north of Tampa, and they could take a direct hit, if not the eye wall, and they're already just barely above sea level.
Yeah, Mike, that's a really good point. The southwest part of Florida is all going to get this kind of weather that you're dealing with now. Mike.
Yes, and don't forget the tornado threat. We've got a tornado watch for South Florida, Southwest Florida. This one goes till noon, and they will extend it. We've got a torcon of 8. That's an 80% chance of a tornado within 50 miles of a point. That's a pretty high number. Now, with that said, tornadoes with tropical systems tend not to be as large and damaging. We had a couple of touchdowns yesterday. Across Broward County, we saw some tree damage. They came in as waterspouts. Dr. Postel, I haven't looked at the radar in about 20 minutes because I've kind of tied up out here, but I don't think there were very few tornado warnings early this morning. We had a batch of them last night when we were out here between about 8 and 10 Eastern, but you can give me the update on the tornado warning situation.
Mike, I don't see any tornado warnings out there right now that are in play, which is a good sign, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way over from there, Mike. You're hanging on. Looks like it's getting even worse as we speak.
Yes, and let me venture out here a little bit, and I'll show you what's coming down. Oh, good gosh. This is what's been blowing down. These palm fronds. Boy, this is a big, heavy one too. There it goes. So that's about the worst of what we've seen in downtown Miami. Driving from the hotel here, palm fronds, leaves, a little bit of trash. You know, nothing that can't be cleaned up in, you know, half a morning. That's a good thing so far. We'll see how we do and how we fare here in South Florida for the next, 8 to 12 hours. By the way, the one thing that will change this afternoon will be the fact that as the storm goes up the West Coast, north of our latitude, the winds will shift around and come this way. They'll come offshore. So any surge issues will go away. But even on the backside, we'll have the threat for tornadoes and more wind damage and heavy rainfall. As of 5 a.m. this morning, Miami had about 2¼ inches of rain since yesterday. Not a tremendous amount, but we've got a long way to go. We're looking for another 5 to 8 inches of rain. And again, I mentioned the surge here in the inland waters to Key Biscayne. These cuts running at about 5 feet, which is down because of the track change over the past couple of days. We thought it would be as much as 10 feet, which would send water over these bulkheads and these piers down here. But 5 feet is half that amount, and that's a much better number. Dr. Postel, while we're on surge and wind, let's talk about how the wind on the East Coast is going to pile the water up, even up to Charleston and Savannah, and then that wind ahead of Irma on the West Coast is going to be disastrous. I'm just concerned about the entire state, but how about Tampa Bay with that wind coming in from the south and southwest ahead of Irma?
Mike, that's exactly right. Very significant storm surge inundation is likely across parts of southwestern Florida as Irma moves northward across the region. And I can time out, giving you an idea of how that wind pattern associated with Irma is going to be moving northward. Mike Seidel, we're going to see 4 to 6 feet of storm surge flooding, perhaps from Brunswick Island, Georgia, all the way through Charleston, South Carolina. Mike.
Yes, and also a tropical storm warning now as far north as Atlanta, Georgia. And so everybody back at home is wondering, what's going to be left. But obviously we're going to have wind and rain and enough wind to knock down trees and knock out power. I guess the question is, Dr. Postel, if it'll be as bad as Opal was back in early October of 1995, because we took it pretty hard in Atlanta. It was trees down and power out for a long time. Hey, we've got Kelly Cass back in the lab. Kelly, tornado warning, give us the details.
Yeah, as expected, Mike, with these rain bands, we are seeing quick spin-ups this morning. But Mike Seidel, even though he's far removed from the center of Irma, still feeling the effects in terms of those very strong rain bands surrounding this storm. And Mike, you are holding on. And I don't believe we've had hurricane force winds where you are yet, have we?
No, we haven't. Not as far as gusts. We've gusted over 60. They've had gusts up to 70 up and down the south coast of Florida from the Palm Beaches down through we know in the Keys, they're already gusting close to 100 miles an hour or just over. But these winds are sustained at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. The rain, if you look at the radar right now, if you can show the radar, you can see the darker reds and oranges, how they're rotating right in where I am in downtown Miami in the Brickell section. Wow. That's a pretty healthy gust there. I'd say that has to be close to 60 miles an hour. So this just gives you an idea of a 60 mile an hour or so wind gust. Imagine what we're expecting on the West Coast with gusts probably at least twice that strong, and the kind of damage that can kick in. Now all we've seen so far are the palm fronds and some small debris and some signs, but everything else seems to be hanging on. Whoa. And, my gosh. Oh, man. I got to get over to the tree here. I don't want to be a projectile. Sorry about that. Anyway, we haven't seen any major structural damage. Remember, these are hotels and condos and down here in the financial center, so it's a lot of brick and steel and concrete, not stuff that can get blown off very easily. But again, we're going to be in this most of the day, except for the wind shift, rainfall. The tornado threat continues. It's a shelter-in-place kind of day in South Florida and then up the West Coast too, as we watch Irma head in that direction. Dr. Postel, it's always amazing when you're this far away from a hurricane. Of course, we are talking a low-end Cat 4, how much wind it produces and how wide the wind field is at this point. And it's just blown a storm out here. It's unrelenting. Yesterday, the difference between now and last night, Dr. Postel, is we had rain bands that would come and go, and in between the rain bands, the winds would back off to about 15 or 20. But this is just a constant battering of the wind, and that's why I have to kind of get myself some footing. Dr. Postel?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for the great reporting there. You are experiencing actually what's called low-end tropical storm force conditions, wind-wise. And there's Mike Seidel. You can see him battling those winds right now. And Mike, tell me what you're getting right now.
It is unrelenting. It's a pretty good battering, much like I dealt with Hurricane Harvey in Port Lavaca. Sustained tropical storm force winds upwards of 45 to 50 miles an hour, which is about all I can handle with my frame, and gusts up over 60. just coming right in off the Atlantic, and the rain is stinging right now. Not the heaviest rain we've had, but it's raining at a pretty good clip. Still have power on as far as I can see behind me, above me. So the power's hanging on. Another tornado warning. Typical with systems like this coming towards the coast. Kelly Cass?
All right, Mike. Yeah, we want to bring everybody an update on a tornado warning, that property damage as well. All right, Mike, out there in Miami, where, of course, we are under hurricane warnings. But, yeah, you've got those tropical storm gusts really going pretty strong right now.
Yes, indeed. You can see the rain blowing from right to left on TV. Coming right off the bay here, right off the Atlantic from Miami Beach. So we have nothing that's effectively blocking this wind unless I get over by the tree. If I get to the tree, I got a little protection from the building. But right out here, I'm taking the full brunt of Irma. And again, this is a low-end tropical storm here as far as what we're measuring wind speed-wise. You probably saw the pictures from Barbuda and St. Martin. Now those winds were 2 to 3 times stronger. Imagine that, 2 to 3 times stronger. So, whoa, what was that, huh? Things are just, the rain is just coming down in sheets. And we're going to be dealing with this most of today until this evening when Irma starts to pull away and heads up towards the middle of the Tampa Bay area. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wow, now that one, that kind of wind gust will take the starch right out of your shirt. You lower your center of gravity and you're in better shape, but we must be running in the 60s. Whoa. I've got to get over to the tree here and out of most. Woo! Man, that is some fierce wind out there. Not quite as windy here. I got a little protection from the condo and the building, but it's still pretty windy. Look at the rain blowing horizontally here. If you're just tuning in, we're in downtown Miami in the Brickell section. Hotels, condos, the financial district. We're right off the water by about 100 yards, if that, in that direction. Over in that direction, we've got the water going up the Miami River. As soon as we have first light, we'll show you what it looks like in the water. The huge waves and the chop once we get some daylight here in the next hour or so. In the meantime, we're over here between the river and the bay, just watching the bands roll in from Irma. Don't forget the tornado threat today. This is the kind of day to shelter in place here in South Florida. Good morning from South Florida. I am meteorologist Mike Seidel, and this is what we're dealing with in South Florida this morning. Hurricane Irma. Winds right now are running 40 to 50 miles an hour, gusts 60 to 70 miles an hour. We've already had a couple of tornado warnings, and you can hear the rain hitting my jacket. We're getting these tropical rain bands rolling in, and we're more than 100 miles or so from the center of Irma. Gives you an idea of how strong this hurricane is. Low-end Cat 4, 130 miles an hour, and what it can do this far away. Already about 15% of Florida power customers are without power in Miami-Dade County. But it's even worse down in the Florida Keys as they're getting set to take the brunt, the eye will of the eye. Let's go back to Kelly Cass in the studio. Kelly?
All right, Mike, hang in there. Again, those strong tropical storm force winds that you're experiencing there in Miami, but we want to take you now down to the Keys where